Well, certainly have concerns about the stability of Europe. I mean, I think the notion that after World War II, democracy and freedom spread throughout Europe and that should somehow now be retreating is a particular concern. But I think people are missing a broader point on what's happening in Crimea. The Russians have a territorial claim that they have moved on, basically thumbing their nose at the world, making outrageous claims like there's no Russian troops on the ground, and it seems like they're getting away with it. That's going to have implications all over the world, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region. China has territorial claims as well, and not on entire provinces or areas as large as Crimea. They have territorial claims on rock formations and islands that both Japan and the Philippines claim in different instances. And the Chinese are watching this very carefully. In the 21st century, what is the consequences of a country making an illegitimate territorial claim and then moving on it? And they're watching, because if the consequences are not too high, I think you could see a potential of conflict in the Pacific region increase dramatically. And the difference between Crimea and the Pacific is we actually have defense agreements to protect Japan, to protect Taiwan, to come to the assistance of the Philippines. That will put at risk America's credibility if we're not able to prevent that.
Do you disagree with anything the president's done so far? He's gotten a lot of criticism from Republicans, yet I don't hear policy differences in terms of what he's actually
done.
Well,
I outlined a number of specific ideas that I thought they should move forward on, and so far they've moved forward on many of them. I think what I'm critical of, and now is probably not the time to harp on it, because national unity is critical at this point whenever you confront a foreign policy crisis. But I do think it's worth mentioning that I think we arrive at this point in substantial part because of things leading up to it. I've been saying for years the reset with Russia was a mistake, because I believe people like Vladimir Putin and tyrants like that around the world oftentimes view the language of those sorts of things as an act of weakness and as an invitation to move forward. I think this administration has failed to be clear-eyed as to the nature of the Putin government and what their true ambitions are. And that doesn't mean this wouldn't have happened anyway. Perhaps it would, perhaps it wouldn't have. But I certainly think it has accelerated the aggressiveness with which Putin's been willing to move, not just on this, but on Syria, on Iran, etc.
Should the U.S. be willing to give up Crimea to the Russians?
No. I don't think we should ever accept that in the 21st century, that a country could simply say, well, we're going to move in and take over a part of another country and make false claims like the people on the ground of Russian descent are being oppressed. Now they're going to try to dress this up as some sort of referendum. There can be no free referendum when your own soldiers are in the streets. So I think if, in fact, Russia gets away with this, it's going to have dramatic implications for the way other countries are going to behave in the 21st century.
Let me ask you finally about a little politics. You've unveiled ideas on education, on poverty in America, on the economy. Does it sound like this is preparation for a run in 2016, a candidate getting ready his policy chops?
It's an interesting question. That's also what I happened to do when I was in the Florida legislature. I actually had a book with 100 ideas, so I'm well behind with regards to that. I would also say, what else am I supposed to do? Even if I wasn't being speculated about, isn't that the job of a senator, particularly in the minority, to be offering not just opposition to the governing agenda, but an alternative to it? And I also just truly believe that the country is facing a real choice here. What frustrates me the most is not what's wrong in America. What frustrates me the most is what could be right about America that we're not doing yet. I honestly believe that a new American century is within our reach, but we're failing to capitalize on that opportunity. And so for me, the sooner the better.
What's going to decide for you whether or not you run for president?
Well, interestingly enough, I'll have to decide one way or the other in 2016, because I also happen to be up for re-election. So I think the choice for me is going to come down to, first and foremost, do my personal conditions with my family and otherwise prepare me or position me not just to campaign, but to actually do the job. The other consideration that I'll have is, can I, from that role, do a better job of advancing the things I believe our country needs to be doing versus the role I have now or some other role. So we have some time to make that decision, and it's one I'll make at some point early next year.
If Jeb Bush gets in, does that make any difference to you?
Well, I have a lot of respect and deep admiration for Jeb, and we're personal friends, but I think he would give you the exact same answer. My decision is going to be based on me and on what I think is I need to be doing at that stage in my life. It's not going to be predicated on what he decides or anyone else decides, and I would imagine the same is true for him.